Good day, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A heated battle between opposing sides to the open net fish farm debate is erupting on the West Coast. APTN's Tina House has that story.
Last June, the federal government announced the closure of open net fish farms in BC.
The open net farms will be fully terminated in terms of operations within 5 years.
The news came as a welcome gesture from the Wild Salmon Alliance that have been fighting to shut down these farms from what they say is contamination to wild salmon stocks.
When the Wild Salmon Alliance began to inform First Nations of the rationale for being supportive of the removal, it's based upon fact. It's based upon federal court rulings, the Auditor General's reporting, on the Cohen Commission's report, on the Standing Committee of Fisheries and Oceans, and most recently the judicial review that came out on the Discovery Islands decisions.
But on November the 28th, tensions boiled over at a press conference in Ottawa, where the First Nations for Fin Fish Stewardship and their allies were there to demand the government reconsider their decision to shut down open net fish farms.
They're listening to activists and ministers like Jonathan Wilkinson, who are continuing to interfere with our rights and self-determination. There's a difference between activists and conservationists. First Nations have rights and title, and they work with conservation community to protect valuable lands and resources within our territories. Activists simply point out problems that exist.
There's no question
17 hereditary chiefs immediately held their own press conference in Vancouver to respond to those remarks.
This is not true. In the Broughton Archipelago, many of the hereditary chiefs that are standing with me today were the ones that made the decision to remove the farms from our traditional waters. To characterize them as activists is completely and utterly offensive. You see, today there are coppers with our hereditary chiefs. They have fulfilled their obligations in the culture of our people to stand up and look after our territories for generations to come.
Dallas Smith spoke to APTN by Zoom.
To be called out in a press conference by chiefs who all have my cell phone number, who drove past my office on the way to Vancouver to have said press conference, is really a dangerous precedent. You know, it's really important that we look at all these issues and understand the role of hereditary leadership on a community by community basis. But to sit here and call each other out personally is just not really going to be beneficial of good results.
Smith also states that over 5,000 people depend on the aquaculture sector and is concerned that his communities do not have the power to sustain land-based operations. However, the federal government is still moving ahead with full closure of open net fish farms by 2029. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Still in BC now, where the province is considering a proposed mine in the northwest. But as Sarah Connors tells us, Southeast Alaskan tribal groups on the other side of the U.S.-Canada border fear they'll ultimately be the ones paying for the environmental costs of the mine.
The Taku River watershed is a special place for Indigenous people in northwestern BC and southeast Alaska. The Transboundary River runs from northwest British Columbia to the Taku Inlet, about 40 kilometers east of Juneau, Alaska. It's revered by Indigenous people on both sides of the border as a top salmon-producing river.
The Taku Kwan, the people of the Taku, have, subsisted and survived and stewarded the Taku River watershed for thousands of years.
But Southeast Alaskan tribal groups say a proposed mine could harm the watershed and the wildlife that depend on it.
It's such a magical place that to even think about activity like that for those of us downstream, it's kind of mind-boggling for sure.
Canagold's new Polaris project is located 60 kilometers northeast of Juneau and 100 kilometers south of Atlin, BC, on the traditional territory of the Taku River Tlingit. The underground gold mine will have capacity to produce around 1,000 tons of ore per day. The province of BC recently gave the project the green light to proceed to the next phase in the environmental assessment stage.
Mining in Canada is just notoriously under-regulated.
The mine raises many concerns for this Southeast Alaskan tribal organization. For instance, Canagold is proposing to build an airstrip adjacent to one of the most ecologically sensitive wetlands in the Taku watershed.
You know, it's a salmon hatchery, it's a migratory bird stopover, feeding place, moose, everything is there.
The project will also be located near the abandoned Tulsaquah Chief Mine. The province has committed to cleaning up the site, which has been releasing acidic water into the surrounding environment for close to 7 decades. But Alaskan tribal groups feel the mine shouldn't be considered until the pollution from Tulsaquah Chief is properly dealt with.
If they're pushing this ahead when they, again, have not yet been able to reclaim and close that site.
The Taku River Tlingit, Canagold, and the province of BC declined to comment. According to BC's Environmental Assessment Office, the Alaskan tribal group's concerns will be discussed in the future if the project proceeds. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Thanks, Sarah. The chief of a First Nation in Manitoba is the first to release a public statement following an altercation that left the Grand Chief of the Southern Chiefs organization hospitalized. Grand Chief Jerry Daniels, now in his 3rd term as head of the SCO, was involved in a fight outside an Ottawa bar in the early morning hours of last Tuesday. The SCO has said little, but promises to issue a statement this coming Thursday. Over the weekend, Minigoshibi Anishinaabe Chief Derek Nepanak released a statement. He said first and foremost he is concerned about the health and well-being of Daniels. Nepanak said the First Nation has had limited participation in the SCO in recent years, and they have asked for information about the Hudson's Bay building the SCO is redeveloping, among other issues. The statement says in part the Minigoshibi Anishinaabe have provided notice to the SCO that we are again minimizing our participation in the organization until such time that we can be provided with adequate information about the conduct and status of the Grand Chief. Meanwhile, Daniels has disappeared from a University of Manitoba ad campaign promoting the impact of its alumni. A media relations spokesperson saying only, quote, "At this time we have paused his portion of the campaign." The campaign has been the focus of commercials, billboards, and advertisements. Time now for a look at one of this week's web poll questions. We're asking you if you feel the Assembly of First Nations is making a difference. Your options there are yes, no, and I don't know. Sean Carlton is a University of Manitoba Associate Professor in the Department of History and Indigenous Studies, and he's also our guest tonight on an all-new episode of Face to Face. We discussed the rise in residential school denialism, something Carlton has been studying. We also discussed the life and legacy of the late Murray Sinclair.
Quite simply, Murray Sinclair changed Canada forever. There's no going back as a result of his tireless work to advocate for Indigenous people, but in particular, his work with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, right? That's a true gift. And his passing is a profound loss for people doing this work. But I did have the good fortune of attending his memorial service here in Winnipeg with my family to pay respects. And I think what struck me is that, you know, he really believed in a better future, that we can do this hard work and come through the other side to develop a better society. And with his passing, I think that torch now passes to all of us.
And you can catch our entire interview with Sean tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right after the APTN National News. Time to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll check in with our colleagues in Australia. Stick around. Welcome back. Black sporting excellence has been celebrated at the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Sports Awards in Naarm, Melbourne this week. The award ceremony that was big in the 80s and 90s is thriving again after being revived last year, recognizing athletes, volunteers, and elders. We get more from our colleagues at NITV.
A smoking ceremony in Naarm, Melbourne, reigniting an awards night celebrating black excellence in sport.
our mob are deadly, man. They can do whatever they put their mind to, they're always going to be deadly at.
Indigenous athletes from around the country gathering at the MCG for the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Sports Awards.
If you've made it to a world stage or you've made it to the elite level, it hasn't been without family, friends, aunties, uncles.
Volunteers play a critical role too. Justin Downing awarded for his work with the Fitzroy Stars, an Indigenous Aussie rules football and netball club in Naarm.
Last year was a good year and they've helped me out personally. Like, I was on a bad journey, but I've come through it, and just that sense of belonging and being part of a community club.
Leaders also acknowledged Jess Skinner was named Coach of the Year for overseeing the National Rugby League Pathways program and for becoming the first woman to coach the Indigenous All-Stars.
Jamie Chapman has another double on the All-Stars stage.
So to be able to do that and still live on country, I think sends a really clear message that it doesn't matter where you're from, you can still do it authentically as being a strong black woman.
The Koori Knockout was named Sports Competition of the Year, with winners Walgett Aboriginal Connection taking home Team of the Year. It was also a big night for a rising star. 17-year-old Walpuri teenager Talaya Blacksmith winning Junior Sportsperson of the Year after competing in the 400 metres at the Paralympics.
All that hard work was put into the track. And I'm just happy representing my country and especially my culture as well.
Elders were also honoured. Uncle Tony Lovett taking home the Elders Sportsperson Award for his notable AFL career and his involvement in the game after football.
And it's where we meet the broader community on equal footing most times, and sometimes a little bit further in front of them. It's a little bit too deadly.
These awards acknowledge the significant contribution Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have made to sport in venues right across the country, including right here at the magnificent MCG. And basketballer Paddy Mills was named the 2024 Sportsperson of the Year after captaining Australia at the Olympics in Paris. His father accepting the award on his behalf. Michael Rennie, NITV News.
Deadly indeed. Well, contemporary Indigenous dancers from one of Australia's top performing arts academies are about to debut their end-of-the-year production. For many of the artists, it's their last show before they graduate, as Cameron Carr explains.
Taking centre stage to send a powerful message.
How is she? How is she?
This performance, called The Trees Have Voices, The Feet Have Ears, is having its last dress run. Behind the scenes, this dressing room in Sydney's Carriage Works Theatre is a hive of activity.
That's my piece, and this is the shirt I wear.
These students are from the National Aboriginal and Islander Skills Association, or NAISDA Dance College, a First Nations-run dance and creative arts education and training institution. It delivers certificate and diploma qualifications, and this end-of-year production gives students a chance to show off what they've learned.
I've definitely had lots of experiences that I would not have thought about when I first came to NAISDA, which is amazing, and so many opportunities that I would never have thought were possible for someone like myself.
The school specialises in contemporary Indigenous dance, and many of its alumni, like Vicky Van Hoot, come back as mentors.
I've had a lot of opportunities, and to bear the responsibility to pass that on, to pass on my experience as a director. And, I've been fortunate to travel the world and dance all over the place, and to give that information to somebody else, that is what it means to be Aboriginal. It's the reciprocity, yeah. It's an honour.
It's a competitive program which attracts students from across the country.
I live 8 hours northwest up in a little town called Bingra. It's not far from the Queensland border, a little country town up there. So I didn't know about any of this before I came here.
NAISDA has been creating performances like this one for nearly 50 years. And after the 2024 season wraps up, many of these performers will be graduating and looking for work.
Hopefully I'll set myself with touring around Australia, even doing workshop with kids, which are inspiring the next generation of what you can do. And coming from not many opportunities, that's something that I would inspire for kids to go and push themselves to where they need to be.
Cameron Carr, NITV News.
Métis politician Dan Vandel is calling it a career. We'll look back on his 30 years in the public eye after the break. Welcome back. Here's a look at your current conditions. 0 in Halifax, -7 in Fredericton, -20 and cloudy in Kuujjuaq, 10 below in Nain. 0 in Montreal at this hour, -1 cloudy in Val-d'Or. -2 in Sault Ste. Marie, sun's out, and 2 in North Bay. -12 in Thunder Bay, 10 below in Kapuskasing. Snow and -14 in God's Lake, -22 and sunny in the Pas. 9 below in Winnipeg, snow and -10 at this hour in Dauphin. -17 with snow in Regina, cloudy and 18 below in Saskatoon. -28 in Uranium City and Stony Rapids. Over in northern Alberta, -14 with snow in High Level, 21 below, and flurries in Fort Chipewyan. -5 with snow in Edmonton, cloudy and 0 in Lethbridge. 8 above in Vancouver, +7 in Victoria. -3 with snow in Prince George, 9 below in Dease Lake. -14 in Old Crow, -5 in Whitehorse. -24 in Yellowknife, flurries and 11 below in Norman Wells. -16 in Sax Harbor and Colville Lake, where there is snow. Dan Vandel is a familiar face in Canadian politics with a long career in public service. In October, he announced he plans to retire in 2025. He recently joined T.R. Wheatley at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights to talk about his early days as a mentor and foster care worker, his boxing stint, growing up Métis, and the spark that led to his 30-year political career.
You recently said you're not running again. Let's start the conversation there.
Yes. Well, I decided that I'm not going to run in the next election. It'll likely be in 2025, which will make 30 years since I was first elected. I was first elected in 1995 as a city councillor in St. Boniface, St. Vital, that way. Before, I ran for mayor and I came in second, so I was away for almost 2.5 years. I came back in 2007 and I was a councillor again until 2014. I realized I really wanted to lean in to Indigenous issues, infrastructure issues, the environment, and I realized the federal government is the place to do that.
Back then, we were just starting the conversation of reconciliation, a whole different picture. Let's talk about some of the what you've seen at the federal level in 10 years.
I saw a huge change. I remember in 2014, Aboriginal missing inquiry. Are we going to have one? Are we not going to have one? Stephen Harper said it's not on his radar, not a priority. We committed to have one right away. Very proud of the work we've done. We've literally invested billions of dollars in housing, in education, in healthcare, all over this vast country. I'm really proud of our Crown Indigenous tables that we've had for a long time. Where we sit down with Inuit leadership, with Métis leadership, with First Nation leadership, with the many cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister once a year, Indigenous Governor General, Indigenous Supreme Court Judge. We've done some really good things. It's not perfect, a lot of work to do.
You were on City Council. Just talk about your time there at City Council and the things you've seen there and that changed while you were there.
In those days, early on, municipalities didn't really invest in Indigenous issues. It was seen as more of a federal thing or a provincial initiative. And we were able to work with our administration, with Mayor Glenn Murray at the time, to put an Aboriginal youth strategy together where we knew that we were going to need a lot more workers in the next 20 years. And Indigenous young people were the fastest growing demographic.
And you worked at Mama Way, so you were even working in community. Let's talk about some of your service within the Indigenous community.
I was a youth worker in '86. My job was to meet and become a big brother type of work with young Indigenous people. Spend time with them, group activities, but also one-on-one time. We used to go to boxing clubs a lot, actually, because I was a former boxer. When I boxed, I had some success. I traveled to different parts of North America with other people, and I realized I didn't know anything about how the world operated. I didn't know anything about politics. I quit after 25 years old, almost instinctively. I just said, that's enough for me, I'm going to get hurt. And I focused on getting a real job at Mamaway. I'm glad they were there for me.
Is that kind of where your political career started?
I actually got awakened during the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry in Manitoba here. And Murray Sinclair was a co-commissioner with Alvin Hamilton, and it just looked deeply at the racism inside the Winnipeg Police Service, the Manitoba justice system, and it was really eye-opening. And it was on TV every day. I remember watching it every day. I went back to school after that for 4 years. I got a social work degree, and I went back to Mamaway, and I worked as an Azosanon foster care worker. Mm-hmm. And I'm giving you a very long story, very short here. I did run, and I got 10 good people to help me, and we knocked on a lot of doors. We did some fundraising. We did a lot of fun stuff, and I ended up winning. I wasn't supposed to win, but I did, and that was in 1995. I've had about 9 elections. I've won 8. I lost the mayoralty election in 2004. I never did get a rematch. I think I could have won the rematch, but it was a good experience. It was fun.
It was also back in a time when, again, Indigenous people weren't seen as, I mean, in our community, we've always known we're leaders.
Yeah.
But in the mainstream Canada, like Winnipeg almost wasn't ready for it yet.
Oh, this was way before the Commission on Truth and Reconciliation, and things had to change. Slowly they have. I think we've made progress. Again, it'll never be perfect, but there's been progress made, and I think we're on a long journey of reconciliation.
Since we're talking about racism, you know, as a Métis man yourself growing up in this city, you must have experienced your own.
I come from a Métis background where it was not very popular to be Métis. In fact, you would get intimidated and violence upon you, and you get killed sometimes. That whole Métis history, where our people started on that side of the river in St. Boniface along the Red River and were slowly dispersed to Saskatchewan, Batoche, all the way up to Northwest Territories.
You've also done time on different boards and stuff before you were minister. You were on APTN's board.
I was APTN for, 5 years, and that was a great experience. Broadcasting, communications, arts, culture is so powerful, and if we're to improve lives of our people, that's going to be one of the main ways we do it, by telling our own stories. History would have been different if APTN was around 150 years ago.
Métis people know how to do the Red River Jig. You going to do that for me?
No, I'm not much of a jigger, and I don't have the right shoes, and there's carpet, so next time.
Yes, thank you so much for today. Yes.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for your first look at the day's news. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Have a great afternoon.